We are at the end of a series. Enemies of the Heart was so great, and Clint, you did a great job kind of poking at yet another enemy. And when you put the finger right where the pain is, it's not very comfortable. I think you're right that we all deal with envy. Mm-hmm. You're one of the pastors here at Cornerstone that I think I've enjoyed the most, seeing like this switch with you, where maybe 6-7 years ago we would come with answers and with to-dos and with like, here's what Scripture says and this is what you should just do. But today, again, you said this is not super easy. It's a real struggle to remove envy from our life, that rot that it brings. Mm-hmm. What would you say are some strategies, perhaps, to bring our desires to God when we feel jealousy taken over, like in the moment, you know what I mean? Is there a way that you've figured out how to do this in the moment?
Well, it's hard to say I've figured anything out because, like you just said, it's all a work in progress. You know, even as I was sharing some of those stories, it's still like the remnants of that remain, the remnants of that envy remain. It's probably something we'll deal with for forever. But yeah, the in the moment strategies of when you feel that sting of jealousy arise, I would just try to get to the bottom of the desire that's coming from. And so why is it that I want my kid to be better than their kid? Like, where's that desire coming from?
So you're saying we should just have a therapist on speed dial?
Yeah, that's one way to do it.
In the moment, you know, when you're on the sidelines at the game and you have this, a jealousy come up, I don't know if I am capable of going, okay, Christian, calm down. What's at the root of this desire?
Yeah, and that's probably more of like the dealing with it, laying it at God's feet is probably more of like an aftermath thing when, you know, you've kind of settled down from that emotion and then you're wrestling with it with him in prayer, with God in prayer, and saying, okay, this is where this is coming from. Why do I keep struggling with this? That's like when I shared the last story about, being jealous of other teachers and preachers. Like, eventually I had to ask that hard question of like, where is that coming from? What is my desire? Like, why do I want to be so good at this? And like, why do I want to be the best? And like, where does that come from? You know, and then you once you start to dig just a couple layers deep, it becomes very obvious how shallow your desires are, you know, in comparison to like, it's easy to hide those desires and think they're some righteous thing. But once you kind of dig a little bit and resurface them, it's like, oh, yeah, that's not really what I want. I don't really want to be better than everyone else. I don't really want other people to be jealous of me, but for some reason that is what happens in our hearts, you know? And so I think the on-the-fly practice that I'm hoping people take from this is the celebrating others. So when you feel that sting of jealousy because the other parent's kid did something cool and your kid was like on the sideline or whatever, instead of taking the bait to kind of whisper to the friend next to you, like, oh, they're friends with the principal, that's why he started. It's like, celebrate them and try to make that a habit of like, that's great that they do that, and like I said,
have you been able to do that authentically? Because you're very authentic.
Yeah.
And so that must be a struggle sometimes.
But here's the thing, you're not lying. I'm not asking you to lie. So if you don't think that person looks good in that outfit, you don't have to say it. Mm-hmm. But the problem is you think they do, and you're jealous of it. So all we're saying is tell the truth. So you're not actually being disingenuine or unauthentic. But yes, it is hard to do, and you do have to kind of fake it till you make it. Like, I think the disingenuousness comes from like when you're telling someone else, like, oh, that's great for them, that looks good on them or whatever, because in your heart you're like, I wish they didn't look that good or whatever, they didn't do that well. So.
Yeah. I also go back to that quote, and I'm going to mess it up, so look it up. Okay, look up the actual quote, but something about be kind because everyone you meet is fighting a battle. So there's really no reason even to be jealous of anybody else.
Oh man,
because everybody's fighting a battle. Yeah,
So can I tell you real quick that story I opened with? What about that house that was absolutely amazing? It was a beautiful, gorgeous house. Well, I didn't even know their parents and how they got all that money and everything. A couple months later, I actually found out that the dad got in this really horrific accident, was actually in a wheelchair, and the reason he got a lot of that money was from this accident. And so it's like, I don't need to be like, what
are we jealous of
What
here?
am I even jealous of, And so like, good for him. It's a lot easier to celebrate.
The basketball court, that's something to be jealous of a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But that's it. You're right. You don't want
and
their
the Traeger.
And the Traeger.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, no kidding. Well, I think all of these enemies of our heart speak of a rot that happens. And what are you hoping for the church, for us as a church, as we move forward and really take this whole toolbox of these 4 messages? What do you hope for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's simple. Like, the call of Jesus is to love one another, right? Love God as he loves us. And that's what we want at Cornerstone. We want to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think when these feelings come, they're more than just internal feelings we wrestle with. These are ruining our hearts and ruining our relationships. It's impossible to love people when we're dealing with our own anger and jealousy and greed and fear. And so I think ultimately that's the goal. It's follow Jesus in the way of love.
I love that. Well, the hard thing about these messages every time, if you teach on patience, you're going to be faced with a lot of opportunities to practice patience. So perhaps that's what we're going to face the next weeks as we try to think of, how do we tackle envy? How do we bring that, our desires, to God? So let me leave you with a question to help you take things a little bit deeper as you reflect on Clint's message. So you can turn to somebody near you, or jump into the chat with our online community, or start a group text with friends, or jot it down at the top of your journal. Here it is. This is the question. Where in your life do you feel envy creeping in? And how can trusting God with your desires help you celebrate others instead of comparing yourself to them? All right, that's it. Hope to see you next time.